Marcus Johnson had never been a man who needed much from the world. He was quiet, thoughtful, and happiest when the sun was on his shoulders and the earth was beneath his hands. For years, he had worked long hours in the city early mornings, late nights, saving every penny he could. He didn't dream of luxury cars or tall buildings. His dream was simple, a piece of land where he could breathe, a ranch where mornings began with the sound of birds instead of traffic, where the stars were visible at night, not hidden by city lights. After nearly 2 decades of saving and sacrificing, Marcus finally signed the papers for a small ranch on the edge of a quiet town. The land stretched out wide with golden grass, a small barn, and a wooden house that needed love but carried promise. Standing there on the first day, Marcus felt like his heart had finally found its home. For him, this wasn't just property. It was peace. It was freedom. It was everything he had been working for. Weeks passed, and Marcus settled into his new life. He fixed the barn roof, painted the front porch, and planted vegetables along the fence line. Every day, he woke with a sense of gratitude. But then, something strange happened. One morning, Marcus stepped outside with his coffee and froze. A tall wooden fence stretched across the edge of his ranch. He blinked, wondering if his eyes deceived him. But no, it was real. The fence wasn't there yesterday. But today, it stood firm, boxing him in. At first, Marcus thought it must be a mistake. Perhaps a construction crew had gotten the boundaries wrong. But by the end of the week, more posts were planted. Soon, the fence surrounded his land completely, with only one gated entrance. When Marcus asked about it, a neighbor shrugged. HOAs doing, he said. They think it keeps the neighborhood uniform. Uniform. That was the word they used. But Marcus felt the weight behind it. No one had asked him. No one had warned him. They had simply built walls around the life he had just begun. It wasn't only the fence. Something else shifted in the air. At the grocery store, Marcus noticed people whispering when he walked down the aisle. At the gas station, conversations paused when he pulled up. In town meetings, he caught eyes darting away from him, as if his very presence carried discomfort. The hardest part came with the gate. The HOA had installed a lock, claiming it was for safety, but only a few people were given keys. Marcus wasn't one of them. Every time he wanted to enter his ranch, he had to ask. Each request scraped away at his pride. Once, as he stood waiting for a board member to unlock the gate, 2 children across the street pointed at him and giggled. Their mother quickly hushed them. But the look in her eyes wasn't of apology, it was pity. Marcus never said a word. He carried himself with quiet strength. But inside, the weight grew heavy. A man's land was supposed to be his sanctuary. But how could it be when he needed permission to walk into it? The days turned into weeks, then months. Marcus poured his energy into his ranch despite the fence. He tilled the soil, built a chicken coop, and patched up the old barn. From a distance, it looked like he was thriving. But the fence was always there, a shadow around his joy. Every clink of the lock reminded him that his neighbors didn't see him as one of their own. Still, Marcus never raised his voice. He didn't march into HOA meetings with anger. He didn't write letters of protest. Instead, he listened. He observed. He let silence be his shield. At night, when the world was quiet, Marcus would sit on his porch and watch the stars. Patience, he whispered to himself. The earth always turns in time. Then came the twist no one saw coming. One morning, Marcus overheard a conversation at the feed store. One of the HOA members, a man named Clark, had decided to sell a small strip of land he owned. People dismissed it. It was too small for farming and too awkward for building. But Clark mentioned something important. That small piece of land also contained the legal rights to the main gate entrance. In other words, whoever owned that land would also control the only key to the fence. Marcus's heart stilled when he heard the words. Most folks didn't care, but to him, it was like the sky opening. All the quiet patience, all the silent watching it had led to this moment. He didn't rush. He didn't speak of it to anyone. He went home, sat at his wooden table, and thought carefully. By the end of the week, he made an offer. The paperwork was quiet. No announcements. No drama. Clark signed the documents with relief, happy to be free of what he considered useless land. But for Marcus, it was the most meaningful purchase of his life. With a simple signature, He became the owner not only of that strip of land, but also of the gate itself. The first day he walked up to the fence with the key in his hand, he felt something shift inside him. The lock clicked open under his touch. For the first time, the fence no longer felt like a prison. It felt like proof that dignity could outlast pride, that patience could outlast cruelty. Marcus didn't slam the gate. He didn't boast. He simply walked through, head held high, as if he had been doing it all along. Word spread quickly. Neighbors gathered in disbelief when they learned Marcus now owned the land that controlled the only gate. Some looked embarrassed. Others stayed silent. A few offered nervous smiles. But Marcus knew those smiles were not kindness. They were discomfort turned inward. Still, he did not gloat. He did not rub victory in their faces. Instead, he lived as he always had, with quiet dignity. He unlocked the gate each morning, tended to his ranch, and waved politely when neighbors passed by. The fence that once boxed him in was now his doorway. The whispers that once cut him down now faded into silence. Marcus had proven something not only to his neighbors but to himself. Freedom isn't always taken by force. Sometimes it's claimed with patience, wisdom, and the courage to wait for the right moment. And so, every evening, as the sun sank beyond the hills and painted the ranch in gold, Marcus would sit on his porch, breathe in the open air, and smile. The fence was still there, but it no longer mattered, because the key was in his hand. And that was the story of Marcus Johnson, a man who chose patience over anger, silence over shouting, and wisdom over pride. The fence was meant to shut him out, but in the end, it opened a doorway to his greatest victory. Because true strength isn't about how loud you fight, it's about how calmly you win.